when you get to know what's important to somebody and you can find ways to support it, now we're talking about, I think, reasons for people to feel tied to you on a human level, not just a business level,
Right.
that ends up helping the business.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they'll pause and not just say, I'm just going to jump over there because they pay me 50 cents more.
If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and follow it in your favorite podcasting app or YouTube. It's the best way to avoid missing future episodes, and it helps the podcast tremendously. Welcome to the Unlock Potential Podcast, and today we've got an amazing episode for you. Have you ever wondered what it's like to start a restaurant with no experience? Well, we've got Steve Rosen. He is behind some of Seattle's most iconic restaurant concepts. We talk about what it's like to go from tech to tacos and how to adapt when things don't go well. Most importantly of all, how to succeed. Let's get started. All right. I am so excited today. We have an amazing guest. We have Steve Rosen from Seattle. Steve, you want to say hi to everyone?
Hi, everyone. Great to be here.
Yeah. Steve, I've known for many, many years. We'll dive into that. But Steve, right off the bat, I'm going to ask a very controversial question. As a owner-operator of many restaurants, you ready for this?
I hope so.
All right. What's your take on pineapple on pizza?
I'm not a pineapple guy. It's funny because I am a salty and sweet guy.
Yep.
But I like it from the standpoint of go salty first and then find something that's sweet and then back and forth. And when the two get combined into one entity, it's just always thrown me off. So I hope that doesn't mean that half of the listeners have just, clicked off. But yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, I think you might have tipped it because I think up until now, we've recorded well over 20 episodes. And so I think we were 50-50. And right before you had Anthony Antone, you said no. And I think you tipped it over. So I think we're actually no longer in the middle. So yeah.
This is exciting. A small victory.
Yeah. That's hey, but just for you though, today I am wearing one of my favorite jerseys.
Oh, what do you got? A little Marchand on there?
Yeah, that's right. Beast mode.
Yeah, I know. What happens when you walk down the streets in Northern California with that?
A Niners game, it was not good. I wore this one.
Oh boy,
that was not good. Like I took my son to a game and it was not. I was like, I thought people in California were cool. It was not cool.
Yeah.
And so it was. I got to be careful out there. But
that's brutal.
I got to represent.
I know. Okay. I'm so proud.
Yeah.
Way to represent
here. Come on, like.
I know he's a local hero, right? So you can't go wrong with that one.
Yeah,
right.
For sure. Exactly. He's a Cal Bear. Come on. And so
it's not really an anti-Marchand thing. It's an anti-Seahawk thing. Fair enough.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, also, I think some people don't know any better. It's like they just don't know. It's like, come on. Don't you know the history here? And so,
yeah.
Anyways.
If you're going to live here, rep the right colors, right?
Yeah. Exactly. But hey, it's great to have you. I got a funny story for you. So since we're rocking, I want to talk. I want to share a quick picture here. So this is a picture. I was Googling for this. I was like, hey, I wonder if I can find it, and I found it. And so this is. Let me see. I'll pull it up here. So if you recall, when I first met you, you were you owning Blue C, which is a beautiful, beautiful restaurant. And we're sitting here, and so I'm going to share this story, and I don't tell the story often, but I share. So you probably don't know, but I actually don't eat seafood. Like I love sushi, but I don't eat seafood. And I remember first time I met you, I was like, we're thinking about QR codes and putting it in different restaurants. You're like, hey, come here. We've got amazing fish tacos. And I remember you telling the guy in the back, hey, make one of the specialties. Jesse, you got to try it. And so you and the chef make me this fish taco. And he goes, and I could tell the anticipation. Well, what do you think? And I was like, all right, I got to take one from the team and try it. And so I ate it, but I couldn't really swallow it. And then I remember you're like, oh, that was not the expression you're expecting. and then I was just like, and mind you, I love sushi. I just don't eat seafood. And so like, I love like tamago, kappa, like all this other stuff. But anyway, so I just thought.
So you don't eat sushi with any fish in it, but you eat other sushi.
Correct. Yeah.
Correct.
It's just I don't know. I just don't like fish in general, but I love sushi.
Where did that come from? Ever since you were a little kid?
Yeah. Ever since I was a little kid, like my family loves seafood. They're all in on that. But for me, Yeah, it just wasn't something I'd done. So anyway, I just want to share that. And
There's so many other things I could have brought you.
I know, but I didn't want to ruin it. I was just like, we're having a good meeting, we're having a good time, and so I just thought it'd be fun to share that fun fact.
Oh gosh, that's awesome.
And that was in 2010. That was what? Oh my goodness, 14 years ago.
Long time ago.
Anyways,
I know. That's
yeah,
unbelievable.
just thought it'd be fun to share that fact.
Well, I'm sorry that I put you through that. That's traumatic.
Yeah, it's great. Then my wife was so mad. She's like, I would have ate it. Like, I love that place. Yeah. So, anyways, that was a fun.
That's a funny story.
And of course, when more recently when we were kind of getting back in touch, hey, where do you want to go? And I go, I love tacos, and so let's go to Rocket Taco. And I was like, okay, is this gonna be round two? But Rocket Taco at El Paso, it's really really good. So love it there. And so
I'm glad I didn't choose the fish tacos for you. That would have been, that would have been round two.
Yeah, but that's okay. I'll take one for the team. So it's great. Yeah. But hey, let's get your story. So you've been around. You've owned a lot of restaurants. You've done owned and operated many, and they're amazing. And so we want to dive into it. But we'd love to get your story and share it with others.
Yeah, sure. I think you kind of know I've always felt like a little bit of an accidental restaurateur. Coming out of college, I went to college down in Southern California and was really interested in the film business, and moved up to Seattle. And with a friend of mine, we made a few short films. We did a documentary film together on a really interesting guy named Stuart Stern, who was the screenwriter of Rebel Without a Cause. And through that whole time, it sort of became clear to me that I wasn't really talented enough to make headway in that business, or at least dedicated enough. For sure, I was too afraid of failing. And so around that time, some friends of mine had just started an internet company. John Keister.
Yep.
And they were kind of looking for some creative help in terms of what the websites could look and feel like, and the tone of the writing and the editorial. So I went down that path and had a really great, interesting time with a company called GoToNet that was later acquired by a local company up here called InfoSpace. And during that time, my current business partner and I were working in Bellevue, which, for those of you who are not familiar with the area, it's just across Lake Washington from Seattle, at the InfoSpace offices. And, just about every other day, we went to this tiny little conveyor belt sushi place. And my business partner, who went to Georgetown Law School, lived in Kanazawa when he was in law school, and he didn't have any money. So he ate at these conveyor belt sushi places all the time. And he turned to me one day and he said, God, I ever since I ate at these places, I had wanted to open one in the United States. And we're kind of sick of, working in this tech space that we've been working in. Do you just want to shift gears and just see if we can open one of these things? And I don't know if it was my age or you just caught me at the right time, but we both decided we'd look into it. And we ended up having a conversation with the head chef at this restaurant. And my business partner, who speaks pretty fluent Japanese, said, how do you like working here? And he said, I hate it.
Really?
And we were like, what do you mean?
Wow.
How could you hate it? I mean, you're full every day. It's just packed. Like the windows are steaming up. And he said, it's because I have a lot of ideas, but the headquarters in Osaka won't let me execute any of them. And it's every time I, go to them with an idea, they say, hey, Mura-san, we don't tell Americans how to make hamburgers. They shouldn't tell us anything about how to do sushi.
Wow.
And that greatly upset him because, he's from Tokyo.
Right.
So it was his ideas that he felt were being rejected. So, long story short, we said, well, we would really love to try one of these things. We don't have a lot of experience. We think we could, build the brand and operate it from a front of house perspective, but obviously we don't have the skills to do the food. Would you ever consider joining us?
Mm.
And he said, maybe. I'm going on vacation to Tokyo and I'll give you my answer when I get back. It was almost like a movie scene. And so we just sort of, waited for 2 weeks. And I'm just wondering what he was going to come back and tell us. And when he returned, he said, in a very kind of dramatic telling of the story, he goes, so I spoke to every member of my family and friends about your proposal. And every single one of them said, absolutely not.
Really? Wow.
Do not go into business with two white people.
Wow.
And we were like, wow, really? Oh God, we're so disappointed. What do you think the worry is? And he said, well, they all said that we would use him for his talent. And then when we were finished with him, we would toss him aside. And that was the fear. And so he said, but on the plane ride, I was coming back and I was going to tell you guys, no, I'm not going to be able to join you. But I changed my mind on the plane because I can be a sushi chef anywhere I want. But if I have the chance to do something that's kind of my vision and it doesn't work out, so be it. I'll go work someplace else. But if it does work out, that could be a really interesting thing in my life. And I think the other thing that really affected him is that it was really clear to him that my business partner really understood at a pretty deep level Japanese culture.
The passion for it, right?
Yeah, and just the way of, conversing and respect. And I think he had a high degree of trust in that.
Mm-hmm.
So with him on board, we got to work and we started designing a restaurant. We looked for a location in Seattle that we thought would be a really good area for street credibility. And in 2003, we launched the very first Blue C Sushi, and kind of the rest is history. Now here I am talking to you.
Yeah.
I never really intended to be in the restaurant business. We were just going to open up this one restaurant because my business partner thought it would be a cool thing to do.
Right.
And the next thing we knew, we were bussing tables and we were hosts. Every night we would switch nights. We both had little kids. A funny story is that here we were, these kind of like white collar tech guys. And the very first night we opened, we walked down to the basement because we had this office in the basement. And we stared at the till that had some cash in it. And neither of us knew what to do with it. And so we looked at each other and said, what do people do now?
Yeah.
And I said, he goes, well, yeah. He goes, I think I started with $100 in the till. So maybe we take everything out but the $100 and then we're back to square even. But we still joke about how that was this big, huge crisis that we had on the very first night.
That is hilarious. And
so that kicked everything off.
Amazing. And of course, I moved to Seattle in 2004 and I remember the buzz, like Blue C was the place to go and the locations were beautiful. And I love the innovation, like the blue light, like if you need service, there's like a little blue light. It's just so many, like attention to detail is stellar. And yeah, it's just like, it was the spot and we loved it.
Well, I think a funny thing about that too, which is I'm sure a lot of restaurateurs and other people who might be listening to this podcast would identify with is when something is successful, it's really easy to think that you're clever and you knew what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. But when we opened the very first one, it was in this neighborhood in Seattle called Fremont, which these days is maybe struggling a little bit, but back then it was a really hot restaurant for live music and bars and restaurants. And we had this mezzanine bar and we thought, oh my God, this is going to be the coolest place. We're going to get all the hipsters in and they're going to be, drinking these cocktails. And we had these, we flew to Tokyo and we filmed all this cool footage in Japan of Tokyo life. We had this massive, 15 by 15 foot screen. And it just had, like you said, a real good vibe to it. And within 2 weeks, I think we realized that our thesis was dead wrong about who this restaurant was for. Because within 2 weeks, it was suddenly families coming in with kids in strollers and kindergartners jumping up and down on the booths. And we realized that, without understanding what we were doing, what we really made was kind of an upscale family restaurant that happened to serve sushi
Yeah.
and satisfied a lot of the needs that families were looking for because it was kaiten sushi on a conveyor belt. The wait isn't very long. The cost is a better value. You don't have to wait for a server to come up and take your orders. So families with little kids would just run in there, and the kids would just start pulling plates. And we just thought it was the funniest thing, that we thought we were so smart and so cool. But really, we built something that we didn't even understand.
Yeah, and it's a great vibe. Like, it's just the lighting, the aesthetics, and so kudos to you and whoever designed it. It's always just felt really cool. And that was one of my first impressions of Seattle. Like, when I first moved there, I interned before. But yeah, like when I worked full time and got a job there, and people were like, "Hey, we got to go to Blue C." I'm like, "What's Blue C?" And then when we got there, I was like, "Okay, I really like this place." And so yeah, it's definitely amazing.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, what was nice about it is that so often sushi is really special occasion because it's expensive.
Yep.
And I think we were one of the first movers in Seattle to kind of have a pretty broad offering of menu items, but at a really affordable price. And so we were kind of doing two things in once. Once we were sort of allowing people who like sushi to have it on a daily basis if they wanted to. But at the same time, we were introducing young kids to sushi. And, once you have a taste for something when you're young, it never leaves.
Yep.
And so, we'd see this phenomenon where kids were bringing in their friends and coaching their friends about what to pull off the belt and what to try and what they liked. So we really had a kind of an explosion of, user generated education about how to use the restaurant. So it was just a really fascinating time. And then we just kept opening them. And then instead of jumping to other markets because that made us nervous, we thought we knew or understood Seattle's market the best. So instead of oversaturating it with Blue C, we started another concept called Boom Noodle. And that one was more focused on ramen and other small plates that were Japanese inspired. And that was, equally the same thing, which is we started off thinking, oh, this is going to be a hipster place to go. And once again, we just got a ton of family, very broad demographic. But that was important to us because one of the things that we learned about Blue C and decided we wanted to try to capture moving forward with most of our restaurants is don't open one if there's only one day part available. We always wanted to find locations and concepts that supported both lunch and dinner, because the prospect of having just one day part felt risky and scary to take on, particularly if it was mostly a night part, because then we were worried, but what if we get pigeonholed into mostly having to make all of our money on a, Friday and Saturday night. And so both of those concepts were kind of good for both lunch and dinner.
Yeah, no, actually, I just remember that Boom was great because I used to work at Expedia downtown Bellevue. When Boom opened, we go there all the time. It was wonderful. And then I like that you guys always made sure the soup was hot, which is critical.
Critical.
So yeah, it's critical. So there's definitely.
You want to hear a funny story about that one really quick?
Sure, of course.
So our chef was this phenomenal local chef named Jonathan Hunt. He owned a catering company for years, did the CEO summits, Bill Gates' house, really big time catering. And he was about to take a job running all of the food at the Sheraton in downtown Seattle. And I called him and said, don't go make a lot of money at the Sheraton. come join us and let's flame out and go out of business in a year, but we'll have a great time putting a restaurant together.
That's a pitch.
And so,
That's
and
great.
so he decided to do that, and he flew to Tokyo, and he worked with the guy who started Ivan Ramen
Mhm.
in Tokyo for a while, and just did the deepest dive into the cuisine. Worked with Murasan and a couple other chefs from Blue C who were from Tokyo, and really dialed it in. And one of the things that was really important to us at the time was putting forth a menu that had plenty of umami without using MSG. Not because I actually particularly had anything against MSG, but we just felt that the tone in the food world at that point was definitely, moving in that direction. So anyway, when you open up a Japanese restaurant, you tend to have a lot of Japanese distributors that you work with.
Yep.
And one of Jonathan's favorite things to do was to have the Japanese representatives from those distributors try all of his food and tell him what felt right and what felt wrong from an authenticity standpoint. Because he was really, he's a very curious person and wants to know, like, what if this doesn't hit home with the people it should hit home with, and I don't want to serve it. So these guys would come in and he would give them all these soups that he was trying. And one day he wanted them to try the Shio ramen or something like that. And this guy takes a sip of it and he kind of looks up, looks at him and says, needs MSG. so, so we were just like, great.
He could taste the difference.
He could taste the difference, yeah. Things you learn.
That is hilarious. Hey, let's talk about your current concept. So you got quite a few, and they're great. And I kind of pull up their websites, and again, I just love the aesthetics and design. And so I'm gonna pull up my browser here, and we can take a look. And so I'm gonna show what they look like. So here we got Rocket Taco, wonderful name. But yeah, we'd love to just describe a little bit about each one here.
Yeah, Rocket Taco was my wife's idea. And we spend a lot of time on an island just off of Seattle called Whidbey Island. And one of the things that Whidbey Island has always had is a lot of kind of diner-oriented food.
Mm-hmm.
But it hasn't had a lot of food in, certain, vertical channels of ethnic cuisine. And my wife, when she gets obsessed about something, she's an amazing chef, and she likes to get down to the science of why something works and how flavors pair together. And she really, after we had, been to Mexico a lot, she really thought that Whidbey Island needed tacos. And we always joke around because it's already hard running restaurants, even when they're close to where you live.
Yep.
But to run a restaurant at a remote island off of Seattle is even harder. So when she found this location and said, I want to put in a taco restaurant here, I said to her, could you please lie down until that feeling goes away? And I like to tell people, she was like Elizabeth Warren. She persisted, and she was just hell bent on launching this restaurant that would be super casual, food forward. And we opened it, and it was just kind of lines out the door. Because, I do think the food was good. I think our location ended up being a good location on the island, even though it's an unexpected one, because Freeland, Washington is not where all the tourists are. Freeland, Washington is more where the locals are on Whidbey Island. So there was a little bit of a risk there, but it turns out that we're also in an area where a lot of traffic went through. And so that was really good, but I think, it was affordable. Again, it kind of fit that thing of 2-day parts. And, people sort of joke, like, I can't believe you're not buying your tortillas, just from stores, because the labor it must take to make tortillas is really immense. And it is. We have, people who come in every single morning really early to make handmade tortillas. And we've never stopped because that was just a super important thing to my wife. And so once that turned out to be kind of a big hit, there was a location right around the corner from our house in Seattle. A restaurant had gone out of business, and you looked in the window and the vibe just sort of felt like the same restaurant on Whidbey Island. And so once again, my wife said, we should open Rocket Taco right here. I can walk to it from our house. It looks great. The neighborhood needs it. There's nothing like it. And again, I said, please lie down until that feeling goes away. And she just wouldn't do it. And so, I mean, just through brute force, she opened up 2 restaurants that in many respects are more successful than ones that me and my business partner have opened, mostly because she vetoes most of our ideas, I'm sure of it.
And I'm not just saying, but it's wonderful. I remember going there. I'm like, man, these tacos are like I love tacos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I travel the world. I get a lot of kind of food, and so tacos is up there. Same with Greek food. There's just a lot, and pizza. We'll dive into that. But there's all kinds of pizza I really love. But it was really good. I didn't know what to expect, but like I know your concepts are always good, and the attention to details there. But yeah, and then when I went there, you told me it was your wife's, and I was like, oh, interesting. I didn't realize it was a family business now, and so
Yeah.
that was super super cool to see.
Yeah. So we own Rocket Taco together, which really translated means that I am her employee. She tells me what to do, and I try my best to do it.
Nice. Let's dive into this one. So it's another great one that you have. Elemental Pizza. I love pizza. And so what's the story behind this one?
Elemental was born because there's a place in Seattle called the University Village that we have done a lot of restaurants before in the past. And it's a fantastic location. The attention to detail that they put into their it's a lifestyle center. It's not, it's this, you've been there, it's this beautiful kind of outdoor menagerie of plant life and flowers and retail stores and stuff, but they didn't really have much of a pizza offering in terms of someone who was doing pizza as the primary thing. And so when we pitched the idea to them, they said, yeah, we think that would really be good for the University Village visitors and shoppers. And so then we started to think, well, okay, pizza's so hard to differentiate yourself. Like, what are we going to do to make it different? And one of the things that we thought about was we liked the concept of wood-fired pizza, but we weren't actually Vera Pizza fans, meaning true Neapolitan style pizza. And the main reason why we weren't fans is I think we were kind of, the type of pizza eaters that like to be able to pick up a piece of pizza and not have it just flop down and have all the toppings fall off. And Neapolitan pizza is delicious for sure, but it can tend to be almost like a fork and knife experience or something that you really have to fold up. And so we started playing around with pizza doughs, and what we decided we wanted to try to figure out what we could do is, could we come up with a crust that was this sort of, hybrid-y feeling between a Neapolitan pizza and a New York pizza crust. And the way we define that is that if you picked up a piece of pizza, only that very tip would dip a little bit, but everything else would stay, stiff enough to be able to hold it and eat it. So that was one thing we wanted to try. And then the other thing we thought is like, what if we did something that allowed us to really just experiment a lot with what we put on the pizzas? And that's where the name Elemental came up with. We came up with because we just thought, oh, well, all pizza toppings are just elements that go on to the pizza. And so instead of boxing ourselves in, let's try to be really expansive and give ourselves permission from a brand standpoint to do whatever we want to do. And that way we're not sitting there and telling the customer, look, we're violating a bunch of rules for pizza if we want to make a mac and cheese pizza, right? Because it's in our brand name to be able to experiment like that. We actually have not made a mac and cheese pizza. That's just
I was wondering. I was like, I don't remember seeing that on the menu, but
no. And so that's been so from that standpoint, that one's been, really fun because it just gives us a lot of options. We're not boxed in by anything in terms of what we want to create. But it's also, pizza, the love of pizza is so specific, and the execution has to be so good. And, sometimes, I'm probably our worst critic, because if I get a pizza and that crust isn't blistered, right, because it wasn't put next to the flame right away, and instead it was put near the outside edge of the pizza deck, then, we failed.
Yep.
And it just, those sorts of things just, it's like driving a stake through your heart because it's controllable. But then, sometimes things get in the way. For example, if it's really busy, we're having this huge night and the pizza chef's worried that, if I've got 6 pies in the oven and I put one close to the flame right away, what if it burns? So if they try to cheat the system a little bit,
yep,
you gotta be careful.
You remind me of Dave Portnoy. Like, he's got the flop, the carriage. He's got all this
oh yeah,
nice vernacular.
Yeah.
And I love his videos. Definitely, it's like an honor to be reviewed, but scary as hell, I'm sure.
And it's super scary. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I don't even know who's. I do follow his stuff, but I don't know who's number one for him right now.
Yeah, and also he also
sure.
likes New Haven pizza, which he doesn't review. Like, he'll always say, "Oh, I like New Haven," but he never ranks it. It's always like a margarita, like a cheese pizza, and yeah, definitely. And yeah, so it's fun. Let's go with this one. So last one is that I have, of course, is Bitty Fish. Also very good. And I love the chicken karaage. I've been to all your restaurants, so definitely I would love to hear the story on this one.
It's so funny you said. I said it. I was just thinking, had I known you didn't like fish, I would have given you the karaage.
Oh, I did, and it's great
at the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So part of the Blue C story was we ended up separating from another one of our business partners back in the day, and they took the Blue C brand, we took the Elemental brand, and they decided to grow Blue C. And unfortunately, I don't know all the facts because I wasn't with the company anymore, but it appears is that they tried to expand very aggressively. And in doing so, got over their ski tips, and the company filed for bankruptcy, which was devastating to us because we had put so much love and attention into creating it in the first place.
It's a great brand, great concept, right?
Great brand, great concept. And but these things happen. And I think that, when I mentioned us being worried about growth, and which is why we stayed home and did Boom Noodle, this is exactly what we were worried about, which is what happens if you go into an area that you're not familiar with and you make the mistake of opening up a location that doesn't resonate. And the next thing you know, it only takes 1 or 2 or 3 restaurants to put a lot of negative pressure on a chain of restaurants. And that, I think, is unfortunately what happened. But what occurred is we ended up getting a call one day from the folks who own that Alderwood Mall up north in Seattle, because that was an old Blue C Sushi location and it had just been sitting there and it still had its conveyor belt.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so they said, hey, look, we're we're leasing this space. I know you guys are no longer associated with it, but we also know you guys started it. Is there any chance that, you know, you want to take a flyer at this? And it was kind of during that COVID time, and we could get a really good rent deal. And so what we did is we said, you know what? It's a little bit nerve wracking because you never know when you're going back to a brand almost 10 years later, if it still has legs and if it resonates, but let's try it. So we came up with a whole new brand called Baby Fish, like little fish, um, and relaunched it. And it was like nothing, it didn't skip a beat. And right
Location's great
away,
too. Yeah, because
location's great. Yeah.
yeah, I love playing hockey, and there's a hockey rink there, and oh man, yeah, you pick the best
Yeah.
spots, but
We try to, but
yeah.
we've made some mistakes.
Mm.
But it's interesting. A new sushi restaurant from Japan, Kura Sushi, just opened 3 blocks away from us doing the exact same thing. And so it's going to be super interesting because their their approach is to have everything be robotic,
Yep.
and our approach is to still have people involved. And so And I think we have more robust kitchen offerings too. There's just more to order from us than there is from them. But it'll be interesting to see in a small area like that, how much room there is for two people doing the same concept.
Today's episode is brought to you by Tonda, the smarter way to retain and engage your skilled workforce. Here's the thing: high turnover, disengagement, and financial stress are costing businesses more than they realize. That's where Tonda comes in. Leading employers are already using Tonda's financial wellness benefits to boost retention, increase productivity, and keep their best employees longer. And here's why this matters. Tonda is already helping major companies across the US, and unlocked potential listeners have the exclusive opportunity to get in before the rush hits the open market. Be among the first to supercharge your workforce with Tonda. Learn more at tonda.io/Jesse. That's TANDA.io/Jesse. Let's play a game. So let's see. I did this with Anthony Antone just recently as well, and so I went on Reddit, and let me show you. So this is gonna be fun. Let's see here. So, what do you think is the biggest challenge or issues you're facing as a restaurant owner? So this is a thread from the last year, and what do you think is like the number one thing on most of their minds? What's the biggest challenge as a restaurant owner?
I mean, I think it's always food cost and labor.
Yep. Yeah. So staffing.
It's
Yeah. So labor staffing. Yeah. 24.
Yeah.
Would love to hear your thoughts on it. Why it's so prevalent? Like if you like anyone can look on this and check on Reddit, like top whatever. It's always up there, right? And so what are the challenges when it comes to labor and staffing, and why is it so important?
Well, this is it's interesting, you know, in the San Francisco area and the Seattle area, if you want to say they're similar, and probably Los Angeles too.
Mhm.
When you're talking about staffing in a big city, a major metropolitan city where it's expensive to live, uh, staffing is extra challenging because unfortunately, I do think we are living in a space and time where this is an inelegant way of saying it, but it does seem like, you know, the rich are getting richer, that, you know, people are moving towards careers that are, you know, technology oriented, and where we used to almost have this environment that people were, you know, saw restaurants as, you know, career focused um industry. Right now, I think for a lot of people, the reality is if I work at this place, what's my progression?
Right.
Where do I, if I start being a busser, can I become a server? And if I become a server, if I want to be a manager, is there a path there for me? And then there's the other side of the coin, which is I don't want to be any of those things. I just want to make tips and my hourly wage, and I want to have massive flexibility in my lifestyle. But in so many ways, these big cities we live in are pricing employees out of the marketplace. And I think there are two schools of thought. So there's some people who will say, kids today, right? They don't have the same work ethic that we did, and other things are important to them. When we listened to our boss, and there was reverence and all this stuff. And sure, there's probably truth to that, probably to every generation. I'm sure the generation that is older than us probably had some of those feelings about us. But the other thing that I think is a little bit more philosophical is around hope. And, I do worry sometimes that, when we look at stress, anxiety, and all these things we read so much about this current generation, right? How many people are reluctant to feel all in on an industry like the restaurant industry or retail, because might be lacking a little bit of hope in how it all stitches together for them. So here's an example. I'm not trying to be too obtuse or philosophical, but here's an example of how it may play out. And I think this is probably true for a lot of operators that you would talk to, right? Back in the day, if you and I wanted to go see a concert, about a month before that concert came up, we would probably, sit down with our boss and say, hey, look, if I get my shift covered, can I go see this concert? It's really important to me. It's my favorite band, right? And the boss would say, sure, love it. Just get your shift covered. Mm-hmm. Well, that phenomenon might happen 2 days before the concert. You get a phone call. Hey, I can't come in this weekend. It turns out that my girlfriend scored tickets to this concert. I really want to go. I'll try my best to get somebody to cover my shift, but I may not. Mm-hmm. And so if that happens, then we have some choices, right? We can be mad and we can say, please don't come back to work. You're fired, which we wouldn't do, right? Because hiring someone is a big pain as well. But, all of these things are just, it's, I guess to use a term today, there's just a little bit of a vibe shift, right? In how people are viewing how they want to participate in the workforce these days. And I think that when they, kind of strike this balance between work, life, and as they see it, whereas it used to be the case that, work was really important because it was the economic engine that drove everything that you might do on the leisure side of the fence, right? Mm-hmm. Well, now it's like, the leisure side of the fence is what's going to drive it. I'm just make sure I work enough so I can do that, because that makes me feel I'm more joyful. I'm happier and all those things. So that's my kind of like empathetic self speaking to kind of what we're facing. And I think as employers, it's sort of on us to, be in that space with them and then try to figure out ways to keep, I guess, you start a restaurant, there's this like onboarding process, right? You go through 2 weeks of training, follow up, get everybody's paperwork, and then everyone's sort of set free, right? And at some point, I think what we as, restaurant owners need to do is figure out the truth that, the onboarding never ends. That's right. It needs to be this like evolution from someone's day one all the way through. And for as hard and frustrating as some things may present themselves to be, ultimately, it's the same thing with your business, right? You need to keep your whole team somehow rallying around a common purpose. In the technology space, sometimes it might feel easier than the restaurant space because the common purpose is so tied to being flexible enough to change with the times, right? Pivot, figure out how much runway you have left with your investment. All these things kind of keep people's nerve endings engaged, right? Where in the restaurant business, sometimes, Monday can turn into Tuesday, can turn to Wednesday pretty quickly, wash, rinse, repeat. and people can kind of shut off. So the really great operators out there, um, and the really great managers out there, I think, know how to unlock this way of keeping people feeling engaged through the patterning that exists in an industry like the restaurant industry, where the whole thing is about being consistent Monday through Sunday and not making mistakes and being the same for people every day. Though innovation feels a little bit different.
Love it. Yeah, because you got to captivate the team, right? Like get them energized, excited, but also to your point, hopefully seeing themselves that, hey, this is the path and the journey to something greater. And it's okay if I'm just here to earn a paycheck, but at least there's something, a sense of like some kind of progression. But also, I've worked a lot of restaurants myself too, so I love this idea of a crew and a team and belonging. And even now, I'm still in touch with a lot of my friends. So I think that's a big part of restaurants that is not. A lot of people are not aware of that, especially if they haven't been at one that functions really well. And so once you've been a part of that, you really miss that because it's like it's a team sport, and I love team sports.
Yeah, and when you survive a busy night,
yeah, exactly,
and a 6-hour shift felt like an hour because you were just going, crazy. There's nothing like coming off that. You can't even fall asleep, right?
Yeah,
because you have that kind of high going.
Yeah.
But I think your question is such a good one. There's so many ways to try to figure out what's going through the heads of people in all industries right now. I mean, look at the headlines about people not wanting to go back to the office, and their reasons why, right? It's kind of the probably the tech executives equivalent of kids today, right? But I think if we can not be defensive as owners and try to find ways to be almost philosophical about what's happening in society that leads to people's motivations, I think more answers appear. Here's a perfect example. We have an employee who we have given microloans to because they have had a project that was important to them. And that's risk in doing that. But we felt good enough about the relationship we had built with them to do it. And she's always paid us back. Now, I don't know if that's building the length of the loyalty that's building or not, right? But I do think that when you get to know what's important to somebody and you can find ways to support it, now we're talking about, I think, reasons for people to feel tied to you on a human level, not just a business level,
right?
That ends up helping the business. And maybe they'll pause and not just say, I'm just going to jump over there because they pay me 50 cents more an hour.
Yeah. And also to like, hey, during my stormy season in life, they backed me, right? And so they invested in me, they trusted me, they helped me. And then the sense of giving back, like if you can build a long-term employee and help them, like so worth it, right? Where it's really like
even if it's not in the context of your restaurant.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Right. I mean, restaurants for a lot of people are transitional.
Yep.
Right. But I think for us and a lot of operators, we are interested in the people where they do sort of see this as a career.
And it's a great career. It's a great career. Like
it really is.
I share people all the time. Like I like to show, like I used to work at McDonald's. I was there for it's my crew trainer badge. My badge. I used to train new people, and then I worked there for almost 4 years, and still to this day, I'm still friends with many people I work with there.
And you probably think about the training too in your current position.
6 steps, QSC, quality service training. I got my employee of the month plaque over there. Even now, like in tech, I'm dealing with an irate customer. Instead of them throwing a sandwich at me, they're like throwing like a complaint at me. I was like, oh, okay, hey, So it's just every day I draw on that, and I think that's where people don't realize how transferable those skills are and how amazing it is. And then if I want to be an owner, operator, I guess I am now, but like of a business, again, those learnings, and even watching, in my case, was a franchise owner. My whole team culture is really centered around the principles I learned at McDonald's, because they do monthly team events. His name was John Clark. So shout out to him, and just him, the way he invested in the team, how many monthly team events, it was like the most exciting thing. That was the only day where no one wanted to take a shift because everyone wanted to have fun and join this thing. Every other day, everyone wanted more hours. And so just those, and that sense of camaraderie and teamwork. And at that McDonald's, he was the first franchisor to have a McDonald's at a Walmart. And so when Walmart first came to Canada and they opened the McDonald's concept, so he led that because he was very successful. Again, it's just so much learnings that it's hard to convey that, but I draw from it every day. And so definitely really grateful to the restaurant industry.
Yeah, I also think if you talk to a lot of people who, like yourself, who worked in restaurants, they see it as it's almost like an athlete getting conditioned.
Yeah.
If you can survive the toughest part of restaurant work,
yeah,
which is, as you know, right, especially as people are tightening down on labor, the more you tighten down on labor, the more people have to know how to multitask and do a little bit of everything in the restaurant. And the people who learn to function in that environment, they become so fast and efficient, and their vision for what needs to be done is so good that I'm sure they go to other jobs and feel very well trained to jump right in. So, I mean, I'm so happy both of my kids worked in the restaurant. Because I see them today, in college and how they work. And it's almost like they're on a shift.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Just getting things done. And it really trains you well for that.
Yeah. And I always tell my son, you're going to work at a restaurant. I go, I don't care. No matter what you have to, you just got to do, and it's totally cool to have a career there, but at the very least do a tour there. Like you gotta learn the basics and understand what it's like to work with a diversity of people, and the rush and the lull, like everything. It's just so amazing.
Totally.
So dynamic.
Yep.
What's your thoughts about, like, the elephant in the room is like, hey, is there a recession coming? Is there a change coming? So what advice do you have for operators thinking about, hey, maybe there's going to be a big change and things are going to happen? So what are your thoughts on that? I'm sure it's a scary, interesting time for everyone.
It is. I mean, obviously it depends on what category you're in, right? If you are in that fine dining bistro space, it could be a little nerve-wracking because your labor is already high because you're trying to, give a certain kind of service.
Yep.
Your pricing is probably a little bit higher. Your food cost is probably a little bit higher. People, tend to guard their pocketbooks a little bit more, and they start to think about value plays. So I think that category of restaurateur probably gets nervous.
Yep.
The quick service side of things probably feels like, well, if anybody's going to get some attention during this time, it's going to be us. But I think the existential threat to me seems less about recession or not recession, but more about, did COVID knock us on our ass so badly socially that during these last 4 years, we trained ourselves to order in more, to go get quick convenience food at Trader Joe's and other grocery stores, to not want to deal with the hassle? Did we become less social? Do we want to be around people less? All of these things kind of have worried me. In the same way, I think COVID broke the office space, right? And people not wanting to go to the office, they wanted to stay home. And if you look at what home is like for so many people, it's awesome. I mean, when I was growing up, there was no such thing as a 65-inch TV that you could go buy at Costco for $500. It didn't exist.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as HBO and Netflix and
Yeah.
Amazon, and none of this was around, right?
Mm.
And so the idea of being entertained meant going out. But even for myself, if my wife and I can grab a good meal someplace quickly and get back to our home entertainment plaza,
Mhm.
right? Which is our bed and TV.
Mhm.
I mean, it's lovely. And so to pull people out, I think has been a much bigger challenge and a much bigger existential crisis than restaurateurs even want to talk about. And so I think we can talk about, economic impact and recession and food cost and all these things that are going up. Yes. But I do think that at some point, at least I'm hoping that we break our brains back in the direction of interacting with each other and not just becoming closed, because that is where, um, restaurants thrive, right? When people want to be there because they actually want to feel that not just, good food and being served on, but the connectedness of being around each other. And I think that really got hurt. That's one thing. The second thing is I do think that food cost is really, really tough on restaurateurs. And I feel bad for people who own restaurants because if I if my costs go up 10 to 20% and I decide that we want to raise our prices just to sort of like stay even with that, nobody on the other side of the fence understands it. They just know the price of their tacos went up.
Right.
And nor is it their job to understand it. Their job is to just come and eat and have a good time. But for us, it's really nerve-wracking. I mean, us meaning all restaurant owners, because at some point you're going to reach a ceiling where you jump the shark and people say, I'm not paying X for Y anymore. And when that happens, your customer count goes down.
Right.
And customer count going down is just the death knell to restaurants. So that's probably where I have the most concern, which is if the cost of food keeps getting higher and higher and higher and squeezing the margins on restaurateurs, how high are they going to be able to go? I mean, I don't know. Look at your area right now. I mean, how often do you go out and just even have the thought, looking at the final bill?
Yeah. It's well now. Yeah. Now I look, I'm like, whoa, it's higher than I remembered. But
Yeah.
definitely, it's there. There we go. Because you're forced to see the number, right? And so every day
You're forced to see the number.
you get the muscle memory. Like when I worked at McDonald's, a combo was $4.27 including tax, and so it was $3.99 plus 27 cents for anyway. So like that's always ingrained in my brain, even though I was like this
Yes.
ago. And so now
Right.
when I look out, like, whoa, what happened? Like, how come? How come? Like, anyway. So I think that's the problem, right? Like we're just so used to that because it's imprinted in your brain, and costs are going up, and so
Yeah.
yeah, definitely it's definitely an optical and a reality problem too, because a lot of people, well, maybe I can't afford it now, and so definitely these are really good problems. But on the
Yeah.
flip
It's
side,
really,
though,
it's really challenging.
yeah, but on the flip side, I think yeah, I'm a big believer in restaurants. I love dining. I love hanging out with friends, and I think as long as we're social creatures, you know, there's actually a really good future and everything else. But yeah, these are really good. You bring up really good points about COVID, change of habit. These are real things, and even like the dining experience. Like, how do we adapt and change that? So say, hey, when we dine here, put away your phone. You gotta talk to each other. Otherwise, yeah, like you're just not even here. And so yeah, definitely. Those are
Well,
really,
and I,
really.
and I, and I share your optimism for a pretty specific reason, and that is I don't think we're going to see an AI solution in the world of food
Yeah.
anytime soon. Now, yes, people are working on aspects of automation to make making food cheaper, because you're losing the labor, and maybe even dial in some perfectionistic things that's hard for a human to achieve. But I think for a long time here, the food industry is going to remain very, very much so people serving people.
Yep.
And in a weird way, that actually makes me optimistic about owning restaurants, because I mean, the tech world, kind of terrifies me now, right? I mean, how many people do we know that started with an AI idea, and every time they try to launch a little app, the next version of ChatGPT just crushes it anyway. So there's no there, right? But if you take the time and you find a location that you believe in because you understand your backyard well, and you put the team together and you do the physical build out and it hits, you can have a very nice cash flow business. And it's super fun because you built something that someone can touch and feel and taste, right? And you're employing people, and if it's the type of thing that's meant to be, then go ahead, open a second one, a third one, and a fourth one. But I do think there are ranges where you can be really happy just being an operator of one restaurant just as much as you could being an operator having four of the same things. So I think that in a weird way, for as risky as restaurants have always seemed, oddly, they seem almost safe to me. If I was going to say, go start a tech business, get funded, and see how well it goes, right? I mean, the rate of failure there, I bet it's just as high as the restaurant rate of failure.
Quite higher, 90%. Historically,
right?
Historically, 90% fail, and
Totally.
So, yeah,
right.
I'm pretty sure it's likely higher, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's look, it's one of the things that I've always, I've told people about you, and what I respect about you is that you have such an amazing ability to throw tremendous energy at whatever you're working on.
Thanks.
And I think that, I kind of joked to you and, before we started this, that I'm actually a very lazy entrepreneur. Because I love ideas, and I love kind of like getting things started. And then once they're started, I become kind of bored and want to start the next thing. It's terrible for success. and I so admire, like when you get onto an idea, it's like a dog on a bone. Like you just don't let go. And that energy, when I see that same thing in people who are starting up restaurants, they succeed because they said, look, we have this space. If something isn't working, we're going to be up day and night. We're going to figure out how to pivot and tweak it again. And I just think that restaurants are ripe for that type of personality, that roll up your sleeves and let's do this. And if it means that I, as the owner operator, I'm going to be there every day, shaking hands, kissing babies, giving away a free dessert, whatever it takes for people to say, this is my space, you're going to do well. It's going to work.
That's great. I appreciate that, man. Thanks. That's really means a lot coming from you, especially I'm a big admirer of your work and your concepts and everything. So that's super cool. So I guess, first, thank you for the time. It's been amazing. I think this
super fun,
super helpful and great. A lot of people are going to love this. Last question I have is, what should I have asked you that I didn't ask?
It's funny. It's not what you should have asked me that you haven't asked. It's actually something that I wanted to ask you.
Go for it.
And it's about the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
I've always had this theory, I don't know if it's true or not, but that Seattle is always just a little bit behind San Francisco and the Bay Area and probably Los Angeles too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Seattle has, I would put Seattle's food scene up against anybody's. I really think we've got some, just amazing places to eat here. But given that I just don't get down to San Francisco or LA that often, like what's hot?
Oh yeah,
like,
you're killing me here.
What's hot? What's hot down there?
I was just talking about Anthony Antone, and I was just saying I don't know why, but I feel like Seattle should be up there with the greats as a restaurant food destination. Like when I come back, like you got a great concepts. There's also really well known, like Ethan Stoll's well known. There's just so many, and they're so
Yeah.
good. And I always come back. I always go to like like I go to Morsels for brunch. Anyway, so there's all these restaurants. I got to do a tour. I get like because my star was on the app. Like we go to Tai Tom.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's all these great places, and so yeah, I would agree. I think in many ways, especially diversity of food. As much as I love the Bay, I feel Seattle's ahead of the game. Absolutely. And so in so many ways, and it's not talked about enough. And I feel like that's why interviewing you and others from Washington State, I'm like, man, there's so much great stuff there too. And how come like there's just not as much? And I think it's maybe the culture of Seattle, like the Pacific Northern, is more humble. They're like I'm originally from Canada, so as Canadians, I think we tend to be not as loud, not as like projecting out there, and I think that's kind of it. I think culture wise, Seattle is great, and there's so many great brands from there. Of course, everyone's heard of Starbucks, Costco, just so many, right? And I think yeah, so I agree. Like I think a lot of the food and the concepts in Seattle are way ahead of the game, and it's just we're not touting the Seattle flag enough. And often, like the Seattle chains, you don't even know they're from Seattle. Like you look at Starbucks, great brand, great identity, but does it really? I guess it does wear some Seattle like colors, but not really. It's like when you walk into it, you feel like you're in Seattle. It's like it's like another place, your living room, which is great. You go to like Costco. Does it feel like you're in Kirkland? I lived in Kirkland. I lived there for almost 10 years, and it doesn't feel like Kirkland, but every Costco feels the same. So anyway, so I feel like we're not wearing our hometown colors enough and not projecting them. And I think that's why we have that perception. But yeah, I would say Seattle is definitely ahead of the curve in so many areas.
Yeah. Can I tell you a quick Costco story? I know we're probably out of time, but it's interesting.
Let's do it.
So we had this really great, you may remember it. We made a puree out of edamame at Boom Noodle.
Oh yeah.
And we just called it edamame puree, and people would take sweet potato chips and, eat it like chips and guac. And I can't remember how we got connected to them, but somebody from Costco had come into Boom and had it. And the next thing we knew, we were at a Costco conference room with 10 people, all trying to figure out how to bring our edamame puree into Costco.
Wow. Okay.
And we were super excited because we thought that, what a great thing for the brand to be able to say, this is a legitimate food source now, a food item for people to enjoy. And they only want to do things if they feel like they're going to be big sellers. So we decided that we couldn't obviously manufacture enough of it. And so they have a lot of manufacturing co-packing partners. And Jonathan, our chef, went to all these different places, and Costco went to all these different places to try to find us someone who could co-pack it. And the thing that made it not happen was back then, they were very religious about making sure that the product could be seen through the packaging. So they didn't want the product to just be a picture of the product. They wanted whatever plastic bag it came in, they wanted a cutout in the packaging so you could see the edamame puree, right? And all of the people that we went to get it made, they couldn't figure out how to make it shelf stable. And Costco needed it to last for X number of weeks, or it just was going to be a non-starter. But at one point, someone from their team said, if this thing goes and it's really a hit, it's not outside of the, possibilities it could become a Kirkland brand product. And my heart sank to myself because I thought, well, Kirkland brand, Kirkland is like the generic brand, right? Out of Costco. Like, I'm not a generic brand. Yeah. Like, this is Boom Noodle. Like, we're not a generic this thing. But what I found out later, as someone was kicking me under the table, right? Yeah. Was that they are very serious about what Kirkland means. when something is Kirkland brand. Like they're not messing around.
Signature,
It's
literally, right?
signature. Yeah.
Right.
And I think, we snobby Seattleites see Kirkland as this, it's not this major metropolitan city outside of Seattle. It's just a suburb of Seattle. What's cool about it anyway, right? And so this idea that, the Kirkland brand would be this kind of royalty within the Costco world, it never computed with me. And to your point, and it's a local company that I've known forever.
Yep.
And I just thought Kirkland brand just meant the cheaper version of, right, whatever they were copying. But in reality, this is why I think their brand is so incredible. They're like, no, 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 no. If you become Kirkland brand, right, it's because you've been vetted and what you do is really, really good. But I just love that story, right? That they really have their own internal brand and they see it as something that is a really serious thing to contend with. And I mean, look how successful. It's just crazy how well they've done recently while keeping DEI.
Yep. Yeah. And that's one of our dream customers. When we think about our future things for our company, our hallmark, like, of course, we want to help every restaurant, every business there is, but we think about the Starbucks, the Costco's, it's just so much opportunity there. And so super cool. Steve, thank you for the time. Thank you for everything. This is amazing. I'm sure people's going to love it. How do people get a hold of you? If they want to work for one of your restaurants, they want to meet you, connect with you, you're an amazing human being and a great leader. And so how do they get in touch with you? What do you recommend?
Any of our websites have our contact information. That's the easiest way to find me. Any of the info at any of our restaurants comes to me directly. It goes straight to the top. So that's a great way if someone wanted to, have a chat about anything. I'm hoping that what you'll do with your audience is crowdsource our next concept.
All right.
So get a whole bunch of people together and let's just do it. Let's just figure out exactly what the people want. See if we can make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, cool. All right. Thanks again, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Great to see you.